Hi everyone, this is Koinzell here. So today I wanted to do a playstyle guide video on Baal, whether or not she should be a main DPS, sub DPS or support character. So I see a lot of the reason why I wanted to do this video because I saw a couple of comments asking me about like whether or not she should be played as a main DPS or sub DPS, etc. So I will first explain on my definition of the different playstyle archetypes. So first off is the main DPS. Main DPS is very straightforward. It stays on the field for more than 3 seconds to deal damage. And the damage is typically the normal charging or plunge attacks, inclusive of elemental skill as well. 3 seconds is just a rough figure, rough estimate. It can be more than 3 seconds. I mean the minimum threshold. But the key point is that a main DPS does not need to be a selfish DPS. It does not mean that say for example, you are using someone like Yomiya. When her elemental skill ends, you should not be shooting the normal physical damage arrows. Likewise, when Hu Tao's E ends, you don't use her normal charge attacks, the physical charge attacks. You're going to run out of stamina very soon if you do that. Likewise for Child, you don't see people really using his bow attacks other than specific scenarios. So this is what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that a main DPS doesn't mean that once their elemental skill or specific buff ends, you still use their normal attacks that are not buffed, they are not optimized as their DPS. No, okay? Main DPS simply means any character that, be it if they go into some specific stance for X number of seconds, as long as they are dealing damage within the X number of seconds, I consider that as a main DPS. Okay. Now, sub DPS. What is a sub DPS? A sub DPS is a cast and forget character to me. In other words, you quick sword in, you cast your elemental burst, you cast your elemental skill, and you quick sword out, which will take you less than 3 seconds. Okay? So that is a sub DPS to me. So for example, Xiangling is a sub DPS. She's not a main DPS to me. She is a sub DPS. I cast her in, I swap her in, cast a Pyronado, drop Guoba, and we switch out of her. That's it. That is how I would play my Xiangling as a sub DPS. Likewise, a character like, say for example, Rosera. Cast the elemental skill first so that you get the crit rate buff. Then you cast the elemental burst so that she gives more crit rate to her team members. Well, that used to be the case, but it may have changed now because of the percentage attribute not working. But anyway, I think you get the picture. That's what sub DPS is. Now, support is very straightforward, right? We all know how the support characters are like in this game. You have healing supports, healers like Diona, Bennett, Sayu. You have damage buff, Bennett, Sarah giving attack buff, Kazuha giving elemental damage buff. Enablers are characters where other than providing support bonuses, what they do is to enable specific reactions. For example, Xingqiu is a very good example, where he is an excellent vaporize enabler. And then you have the new support type Universal Battery, introduced by Baal. Actually, I should say introduced by Electro Traveler, since the Traveler is the very first Universal Battery per se. It's just that Baal is a much better one. Okay, so these are how I would define the archetypes. If you want a main DPS that stays on the field beyond their elemental skill stance or their specific kit stance mode where they are buffed, right? You should be looking for a selfish DPS, not a DPS like Hu Tao, for example. You want a selfish DPS like, say, Razor. Okay, that's an example of a selfish DPS. Alright, so this is the archetype definition. So let's talk about Baal's kit. Okay, so first off, she has her first support function is elemental burst buff. This is from her elemental skill. Elemental burst buff based on her level and the amount of energy that your other team members have. So this is a very flexible support function. Can be sub DPS, can be main, because it works for both. Okay, and obviously it's a damage buff. Now you have a second support function on Baal, which is energy restoration and cooldown reduction at C6. And this requires her to hit at least once every 1 second. It's capped at 1 second once for the effect to happen. and it's up to a max total cap of 5. So in other words, you need to spend minimum 5 seconds in her burst stance mode. If you factor in her burst animation cast time, the very first initial cast time, you're going to be left with like 1 second of her burst stance mode where she's just dealing damage without giving any support function. And this is the type of energy restoration you can expect at 200% ER, 250% ER, and 300% ER. 20, 23.5, and 27.5. So based on all this, right, what do you guys think her archetype should be like? First off, before I go there, this means that in order to restore energy, she needs to be attacking and staying on the field for more than 3 seconds to deal damage. Remember my definition here? More than 3 seconds to deal damage. She cannot do a cast and forget, back to this definition, because she needs to attack and stay on the field for 5 seconds minimum. Otherwise, it's just a huge waste of a kit, huge waste of a DPS, huge waste of a support function. So yeah, she can't do a cast and forget. Only her elemental skill you can do a cast and forget. But the thing is this, if you saw my damage figures in all my math video, you'll know that she's not able, her elemental skill is only about 10% of her burst damage in the span of 7 seconds. So I really don't recommend you dropping her burst stance normal attacks to use her as a cast and forget. I mean, yes, her burst initial hit does damage too, but you're sacrificing way too much damage and utility if you don't attack with her Tachi, which is her Booba sword. By the way, this is a Yoimiya pull video from C0C3. I did not actually release this because people were trashing on Yoimiya so much. But anyway, this is the footage for my personal pulls from C0C3. So, what archetype is Baal? She's actually a main DPS plus support at the same time. Because in order to get her support function, you need to play her like a main DPS. Her support function in damage buff and universal battery. So that's why I say she's a main DPS plus support at the same time. She's not a support DPS. She's not a sub DPS. She's not a pure support. I don't want to call her support DPS because support DPS is a bit different, the meaning. So to me, she's a main DPS that can support at the same time. So you need to build her as a, you should build her, if you want to optimize her, you should build her as a main DPS. And she's a main DPS for the duration, she has a burst stance active. Once her burst stance ends, you should be switching to other characters. For example, another main DPS with 8 seconds of stance mode or buff. Example, Child with his Shiminawa or 4-piece, you should be using him only for 10 seconds and 15 seconds on his E. Yoimiya's E lasts for 10 seconds, Hu Tao's E lasts for 9 seconds. And you notice that all 3 of these characters, when you switch them out, their stance ends. Likewise, for Baal, it's the same thing. If you cast her burst and you switch her out, she will lose her Muso no Hitotachi or Muso no Ishin mode. Okay, she will lose her Muso no Ishin mode, which is her burst stance mode. You won't be able to get her utility, you won't be able to attack with Electro damage. Electro normal attacks. So it's actually a good idea to put these 2 characters to rotate. Okay? Even if you don't have these characters to rotate, you can put other characters in your team that may take a longer time in casting. For example, Kazuha. You can use his elemental skill. If you're C1, you can use the elemental skill, then you use the burst, and you use the elemental skill again. That extends the amount of time taken by that character without that character being another main DPS, for example. I mean, that's another example that I wanted to give. But I hope it helps you guys visualize that she should be built as a main DPS, and if you can, put another main DPS that is similar to her, so the 2 of them kind of alternate their stance mode, right? And the other 2 members will be there to quick sort in and cast their buffs, heals, support, whatever the case that you have decided to play. Okay? So this is how Baal's archetype should be like, in my opinion. So the only variation here, however, is whether you want to maximize your DPS while providing decent energy restoration, which means 200% ER, or B, you want to optimize your energy restoration while sacrificing a bit of DPS, which is 300% ER. Now, a bit of DPS is a bit subjective. It's a little subjective. So I have the math figure. After all, you know, you guys, I am doing a math video, right? I will have a bit of math here. So you guys can see for yourself how the figures are like and can decide how you want to choose which particular ER option. Or you can just choose the balance in the middle, i.e. 250% ER. Now, how much ER is required, we don't know yet for 100% burst attack on Baal. But I'll cover that as a final note in the TLDR later. Okay, so let's look at the math figures. So here you have 300% ER, 250% ER, 200% ER. All of these damage figures are from my from the math I've done from my previous math videos. It's just that I've never provided a compiled view looking at ER going from ER to ER. Okay, my previous weapon comparison video for all weapons other than Engulfing is at 200% ER. Only Engulfing is at 300% when ER when we compare. Because it doesn't make sense to go lower than 300% ER on Engulfing really. So that's why I have listed them as NA throughout. Okay, when it's 250 and 200. So with that being said, right, I'll just quickly run through the first row so that you guys can appreciate what I'm trying to say here. So to catch R5, 300% ER on her with C0 level 9 burst M41C, it's 56397 damage, this full combo. When you go from 300 to 250% ER, it's 59387, and basically you gain almost a 5.3% gain. Yeah, sorry, actually this should be gain. Why did I write loss here? My bad. Okay, DPS gain. Okay, so 200% ER here, 63392. So you see that the damage is increasing, and this is the DPS gain that we'll be getting. When you go from 300 to 250 ER, you get 5.3% gain on the catch R5. When you go from 250 to 200, 6.7. When you go from 300 to 200, it's 12.4%. Again, remember that 250 to 200 is a compounded interest, so that's the reason why these two figures will not add up to this. Okay, so then we have Skyward Spine R5 and Skyward Spine R5. Now, Skyward Spine, I know a lot of people are doubting whether or not the effect will proc. I also can't say for sure whether it will proc or not. But there is one thing I want to note, which is the description here says that while Musou Ishin is active, the Raiden Shogun's normal, charge, and plunge attack damage will be considered elemental burst damage. But notice that it says damage very, very, very specifically, which means her normal charge and plunge attacks during Musou Ishin may still be considered as normal charge and plunge attack types. Okay, the type of attack. It's just that the damage is considered as elemental burst damage. Maybe for the sake of doing procs, it is considered as normal charge and plunging attack. But we can't say for sure until we test it out. Okay, but for the purpose of this video here, I've assumed that it does proc, and that is why the figures are slightly better than the catch. Okay, if it does not proc, then it's actually almost exactly the same as the catch. And these are the percentage figures, the DPS gain when you go from 300 to 50, 250 to 200, or 300 to 200. Likewise, we have the R5 Skyward Spine. PGWS is med stats. So I actually covered in my assumption here. So to simplify the comparison, I'm using only her M41C figures. PGWS med stats assumed. Homa less than 50% HP. And optimal artifact means that it's already used for each of these PR target as per my previous math videos. They vary a bit, so I don't want to talk about what is the variation. You can check out my previous math videos for that. But these are the figures. These are the conditions we have attached to the weapons. And you see that Engulfing Lightning R1 still does the best damage at 300% ER. Okay. In fact, whether it's 300% ER or 200% ER, is still the best damage. But at 300% ER, it does even better than other weapons R5. Okay, that's the difference. Do you see this? ATK at R1 does more than Homa R5, does more than R5 PJWS at med stats too. Okay. Yep, that's it. So this is the big difference that we are talking about here. Alright. Now on to two important notes I want to highlight. This here is where Engulfing Lightning shines, because it enables you to get 300% ER easily while solving her lack of attack, which means your Engulfing Lightning is actually option D. You see I have ABC here, right? But Engulfing Lightning is actually option D, where both your DPS and energy restoration is both optimized. Because both of it is at 300% ER, you do not lose DPS. You don't really lose DPS when you go from say 300 to 250 ER on Engulfing. In fact, I did the math before, it's less than 1%. If you use an added sense, when you switch from 300 ER to 250 ER on Engulfing and Lightning, you only gain like less than 1% boost, but you lose your energy restoration. So why bother? You might as well use your ER sense. Okay, so this is why her signature weapon is really good, because it gives her so much boost. Right, it gives her a new option where she can optimize both her DPS and energy restoration at the same time. Okay, now note 2, I use the term optimizing instead of maximizing for energy restoration. Because you can go beyond 300% ER, right? But I do not recommend it personally, because every 100% ER above 300% ER drastically reduces your DPS. Your CR/CD drops way too much. And every 100% ER gives 7.5 energy to all team members in total. Let me just rerun this video. And every 100% ER gives 7.5 energy to all team members in total, which in my opinion is not worth it for such drastic loss in DPS. If you want to see how drastic the loss in DPS is, you can check out my very first Baal math video, where I did a comparison of 385 ER versus 300 ER. Because 385.7% ER is the target to achieve if you want to get max attack cap on R1 Engulfing, which is the 80% attack. Well, it's not worth it at all. I already done the math for that. It's really not worth it. Okay. So my personal recommendation, highest you should go is just 300%, or in the case of Engulfing, you can go 314% at R5 to get a max bonus without any real loss in your CR/CD per se. Or you can just go 310 on R1. Okay, just check out my first Baal math video on that. That will explain very well how Engulfing works and what are the ER targets to meet, etc. So let's come to the TLDR session of this video. So TLDR itself, first off, Baal's design makes her a main DPS but support at the same time. So you should be her as a main DPS, primary definition, which means that main DPS does not need to be a selfish DPS. Okay, main DPS can be someone who in his or her stance mode does damage, and then you swap them out to do other stuff with your other team members. Now, assuming 200% ER is enough burst up time for Baal, you have the options of going 250, 200, 250, or 300. Otherwise, the options and DPS get reduced accordingly, which means if you say, for example, you need 250% ER to get 100% burst uptime on Baal, it means that 200% ER here is no longer an option. You can only go 250% ER if you want 100% burst uptime. However, there's a big if, we don't know until we try it out when she's released. But you do see the DPS loss. Yeah, 250 to, or rather when you go from 200 to 250, the difference, this is the amount. It might change slightly because what we are doing here is 250 200. When you go 200 to 250, it will change slightly, but it's about there. You won't vary too much. Okay, so these are the kind of percentage figures you'll be looking at potentially losing when you go from this to this. I mean, the figures are here. You can literally see the damage figures here. Okay, and if Baal requires 300% ER uptime, then everyone else performs worse compared to Engulfing Lightning. But honestly, I don't think it will reach there. I mean, as a simple example, right? Let's say you use something like not a sacrificial sword, use something like Skyward Blade on Xingqiu with an 80 energy burst. 200% ER is usually enough to give you a 100% burst uptime. So that's why I say for Baal, on her 90 energy cost, you should not need, I mean, worst case scenario should be 250. I don't think you will need 300. 250 should be the worst case scenario. But 200% may be able to get her to work, especially if you're using her with another Electro character, like Sarah, who's completely designed to support her. And her entire character is revolved around loyalty to the Raiden Shogun too. So yeah. So anyway, that is TLDR A and B. And C, I just want to repeat, Engulfing has no constraint like in B. Okay, Engulfing is 300%. You will have no constraint. You will have highest DPS and highest energy restoration at the same time. Okay, that's Engulfing, which is the signature weapon. Which weapon banner has just been announced to have the Unforged, which is not that great. Not that great. Okay, but not that great. I mean, the Forge is still better than WGS in 1v1 scenarios, and if you have Zhongli. Alright, so anyway, this is the video on the playstyles for Baal, how you should use her and how you should build her. Of course, this is all talking about optimization. You are free to play and build her however you like. I'm just providing a optimization perspective if you want to optimize. Alright. Oh, and very importantly is if you have skipped to this TLDR session, please at least watch this, how I define the main DPS, sub DPS, and support. Alright. Okay, so if you like the content, remember like the video and click subscribe for more. Thanks everyone for watching. Bye.